I'm the courier, in car, delivering parcels and drinking coffee. I also want to deliver some Reddit stories to you. Hope you will enjoy it. If yes, please give the video a like. Now to the first story. I have a scary story I will share that is 100% true. It's a bit long. So, my friend and her husband bought a 1920s arts and crafts style cottage and spent a year or so fixing it up and did a pretty damn good job. The house was beautiful, immaculate, and still cozy and homey. She asked me if I'd be willing to house and pet sit for a few weeks, and I agreed, looking forward to pretending the house was mine for a while. She took me on a walk through, and I noticed that the attic door was not only locked, but several boxes of books were piled up against it. When I commented, she said the cats were at the door constantly because there were bats in the attic. I asked jokingly if the house was haunted. She laughed and said no, she didn't believe in ghosts anyway. A few nights into my stay, I started having weird dreams and waking up to the sensation of not being alone. I started hearing noises coming from the attic, not footsteps, more like subtle bumping and dragging noises. I called a friend, she sent her dad over to investigate and said again that it was bats. The noise creeped me out, so I asked my boyfriend to stay with me. The first night he woke me and said that he saw someone standing in the hall outside the bedroom. Of course, no one was in the house and he thought maybe he was dreaming. The second night we both heard the sounds coming from the attic. We decided to spend the rest of the night sleeping on the couches in the family room. It was then that I saw the black orbs, like what you'd see in a picture when someone points out orbs. I watched these translucent, blackish bubbles move around the room. I decided to cat sit during the day, but not sleep there as the house was giving me the creeps big time. On the second to last day, I went in the late afternoon after work to feed the cats and spent a little time with them. I had a long day and I dropped off to sleep on the couch. When I woke, it was dark outside. I sat up feeling that disoriented feeling you get when you nap. From my seat on the couch, I could see a picture that was on the wall of a short hallway connecting the front foyer to the kitchen. The picture glass reflected the kitchen. I looked at the picture and saw what looked like a man standing in the kitchen, motionless. His stillness was totally unnatural. I could see that even in a reflection. Like he was a cutout of a person. His eyes were just two black holes. I had the misfortune of making eye contact with this thing that was in there. I knew instantly that it was looking at me. The second I made eye contact, I felt an overwhelming sensation of revulsion and absolute, abject fear. I'm talking about a primitive, nausea-inducing horror. My skin literally started crawling and my heart started racing. I had to get the fuck out, and I mean immediately. The air felt electrified. The figure in the kitchen was not visible anymore, but it was definitely not gone. I felt certain that if it appeared to me again, I would never get over it. Thank God my purse and shoes were with me. I grabbed my stuff without putting my shoes on and bolted for the door. Turning my back on the kitchen to open the door was one of the hardest things I've ever done. I knew it was behind me. At this point, I was shaking. I leapt out the door and pulled it closed, but I still had to lock the door. I fumbled and dropped the keys, and as I bent to pick them up, I became sure that the thing was standing right there, behind the big pane of beveled glass that made up the top half of the door. So I closed my eyes and locked the door with my eyes shut tight, and then I ran to my car and drove away as fast as I could without looking back at the house so I wouldn't see what was looking out at me. I called my friend's mom and told her I couldn't finish as I was sick. So asked no more questions. A few months after this, my friend had a baby, and a month after that my friend abruptly put the house up and moved out before it sold. This had been her and her husband's dream house. They sunk everything into it. It was her trophy. I couldn't believe it. I asked her what happened. She only said that they had to get out. Before my dad passed away, he shared with me a remarkable tale from his time in Vietnam during the 1960s. It was a story that had been kept secret for many years, known only to him and a select few in our family. During one mission deep in the jungles of Vietnam, my dad and a small team were tasked with placing seismic ground sensors along a trail network. They were accompanied by South Vietnamese villagers turned fighters, known as C.I.D.G. strikers. As they ventured further into the dense foliage, my dad and two of the soldiers broke away from the main group to observe a nearby trail intersection. The jungle seemed unusually tranquil that day, with only the sounds of nature surrounding them. After hours of observation, they debated whether to proceed or return to the rest of the patrol. Just as they were about to step onto the trail, my dad spotted something astonishing: a light-skinned black Union cavalry soldier, fully armed, lying near the intersection. The soldier, equipped with pistols, a Spencer rifle, and a distinctive curved club, signaled for silence with a finger to his lips and motioned for them to retreat. In a matter of moments, the NVA, North Vietnamese Army soldiers, marched through the intersection, oblivious to the hidden observers. My dad estimated their numbers to be substantial, enough to overwhelm his entire team. With a newfound sense of urgency, they silently retreated and reunited with the rest of the patrol. Though my dad reported the enemy encounter, he kept the mysterious Union soldiers' presence to himself. Years later, on his deathbed, my dad finally revealed the encounter to me, recounting his grandmother's cryptic response: "You saw Old Red Tom." This revelation connected the dots. Old Red Tom was none other than my great-great-grandfather, a half-black, half-Creek free man who had served as a scout for the Union Army during the Civil War and later with the U.S. Cavalry in the American West. His distinctive armament matched the description of the enigmatic soldier my dad had encountered in the jungles of Vietnam. It was a tale that defied belief, yet carried with it a profound sense of ancestral protection and guidance, a secret passed down through generations, finally unveiled before my dad's passing.
Using the left 2 lanes exit onto Stamford Road.
About 10 years ago, I was recently divorced and living alone in a one-bedroom apartment. The place was clean, and the rent was decent, one of those places that had a doorman. I felt safe here, alone and loving it, focused on my career and not on my clingy ex-husband. Things were finally looking up for me. At the time, I was working pretty late at the office and would often stumble into my apartment sleep-deprived in the early hours of the morning and wake up by 6:30, 7ish to start the day. I started noticing that in the morning, my door would be unlocked sometimes. I usually dismissed this as my sleep-dead brain thinking that the bed looked more appealing than locking the door. Another thing that I noticed since moving in was that I seemed to misplace things more than I used to, little things like a hairbrush or nail polish, that sort of thing. It wasn't really that big of a deal, just enough to be a slight annoyance in my day. The longer I lived there, the more frequently I seemed to forget to lock the door. At first, it was every once in a while, then it seemed like an almost daily occurrence. More things went missing, things like pictures, shaving razors, and most disturbingly, my underwear. This went on for long enough that I started to get a little paranoid. I started to take the time at night to make sure the door was locked. I got into a habit of every night after I locked the door to turn the handle 3 times and say to myself, "It's locked, it's locked, it's locked." Time after time, I would wake up, and the door would be unlocked. One time, I even tried staying up all night to watch the door, but I ended up falling asleep in my chair. I decided that my mind was not reliable enough to stay up all night, so I invested in a video camera. I went all out and bought the fanciest camera that I could get my hands on. So one night, I set the camera up facing the door. I hid the camera under a pile of towels on the floor. I locked the door and went to bed. When I woke up, my apartment looked normal. Nothing missing that I could see. I decided to check the tape. I fast-forwarded through hours of footage, not seeing anything. I was just about to give up when I noticed the handle of the door jitter. Then it slowly crept open. A figure slid through the half-opened door and walked towards the camera. It paused, looked around as if it was listening for something, then walked forward into direct view of the camera. I paused the camera, the hairs on my arms and the back of my neck started to rise. I was staring directly into the face of the maintenance man of the building. I could see those big thick glasses and curly hair. I had no doubt who it was. I played the tape a little more. He looked comfortable as he walked around the apartment. Then he turned and walked towards my bedroom and out of the view of the camera. I didn't know what to do. Sobbing, I called the police. I tried to explain over the phone but couldn't. Soon enough, 2 officers arrived at my doorstep. I told them everything and showed them the tape. I remember seeing the blood drain from their faces. They promised me that I was safe and that they were going to get this guy. I needed to lay down but didn't want to be alone. One of the officers offered to stand outside my apartment door as I took a nap. As I was laying in bed unable to sleep but too trained to move, something kept nagging at me. I laid there for a few minutes tossing and turning, unable to get comfortable or rest. My mind was racing. Then a realization slowly washed over me and chilled me to the bone. We watched the tape and saw the man enter my home. But we never saw him leave. I froze, then started shaking. I needed to get to the front door. I sat up and looked around the room. I couldn't see anyone. I swung my legs over the side of the bed cautiously, my feet hit the cold wood floor, and I felt warm breath on my ankles. I raced out of my apartment as fast as I could to the safety of the police officer. He called for backup. They found the man under my bed, clutching a knife and a Polaroid camera.